When creating our images inside the grid, we had the option to create variations of these images. We did that here when we created this grid here based on an earlier image. And if we have a look at our prompt, which is added right here, afterwards we have this variations subtile, let's call it command, added right here. And if we look at our upscaled image now, we can do the same thing for such isolated images. We can create strong variations, subtile variations, or region-specific variations, which we'll cover in a few seconds. If we create a strong variation and maybe a subtile variation first, we should see the differences between these two variation types. So let's now compare the initial image with the two variations that we created. The left one is the upscaled image and the right one is the subtile variation. And the images look basically the same, I would say. We have some differences regarding the direction of the trees. The water looks a bit different, but no big differences can be found here in my opinion. Things are a bit different if we look at the strong variation here. Obviously, the core image still remains the same, but for example, the first three images are flipped now, so we have the trees to the right. This image here has an additional island, same thing applies to this image here, and also here in the background we see the island being increased. So generally, we have stronger changes when comparing it to the subtile variation. As mentioned, the underlying image obviously remains the same, so the core look of the image doesn't change, but more things are edited, are changed in this image with the strong variation. This obviously also depends on the image type you use, so depending on the upscaled image, changes, variations might become more significant than we see it right here. So vary here describes the amount of variations that we want to apply to our image. Vary region here is a bit more explicit, because with vary region, we can use either this rectangle tool to select specific parts in our image, or undo this and select this tool here to draw our own areas individually, like this maybe. And now, hopefully, this part of the image should be varied, should be changed. So in our case, the tree type should change. Let's see if this works by hitting submit here. Now at the bottom, a new image generation process is initiated. And indeed, we see that the selected part, so our palm trees here, changed. The other parts of the image remained unchanged in our grid here. So these vary options here allow you to change either the entire image or just specific part of an upscaled image that you created. The remaining options are a bit more straightforward actually. The zoom out option, either 2 times or 1.5 times, zooms out of the existing image. You can also define a custom zoom over here. In here, we cannot define our zoom via so-called parameters. So parameters are always indicated by these double dashes. So this is the aspect ratio we could change. This right here is the zoom. I'll not dive into parameters at this point though, because these will be covered in a lot of detail in the next course module. But here, if you change this parameter, you can, for example, add a zoom level of 1.3 here and submit this. Then you got this custom zoom level added, which you can see right here in your prompt. And this zoom level for the custom zoom has to be between 1 and 2, so values of 3, 4, etc. won't work. And now if we see our newly created grids, you see this is zoomed out by a factor of 2. This is zoomed out a bit less by a factor of 1.3 only. And now we could simply take our fourth image here and upscale this. And now apply one of these arrows here. these arrows will simply increase the image size. So it will not change the zoom, but instead, if I click onto this right arrow here, for example, this now creates a new grid with 4 images where the viewing angle will be increased to the right of the image by adding new AI-generated content. And if we look at the result now, I think this doesn't look too bad actually. If you look at this image, for example, Midjourney now simply added another beach here to our image. And this now also works to the left, to the top, and to the bottom, depending on the requirements for your specific image. The last 2 options will be covered in a few minutes in this module, but at this point we are done with the core features that we need to know about when it comes to creating images in Midjourney. As a next step, I want to dive a bit deeper into the settings of Midjourney and how these impact the way our images are generated.